Okay. I decided to do this, recording my life story, for you, Nicholas, my adorable, smart, handsome, wonderful grandson. It's easy to forget things, and it's not always easy to find out things. So this is where I'll tell you some things you may or may not have heard about before, and we'll have fun. First of all, did you know that I was born in Memphis, Tennessee? That's where Elvis Presley lived. You don't know who he was, but I do. And moved around a lot when I was a young lady. Spent a lot of time with my grandmother, Grandma Katie. And she's quite a remarkable person. Her name was Janet Bell Katie. And the two things that are most interesting in that name is the Bell and the Katie, because Grandma was related to Alexander Graham Bell, and there was a lady suffragette named Elizabeth Cady Stanton, and Grandma was related to her also. So that's something you might want to look up in your history books, because that's interesting. And I lived a long time in Indianapolis, Indiana, which was quite nice. Went to high school in two places. A terrible small town called Ligonier, Indiana. Pop was the vice president of a company that made George Masterwork Garment that made embroidered uniforms. And they were the biggest company in the United States. But that was before China took over and they lost business. So when that happened, we moved to Allentown, Pennsylvania, where Pop was in what he called the meat packing business. That would be women's undergarments. So I graduated from Allentown High School and went on to college at Miami University, which is where my brother Dave went to school. And I pledged a sorority there called Chi Omega. And then I transferred because, of course, I was deeply in love with somebody who went to Indiana University. So that was me, off on the trail, going to Indiana University. But that didn't work out so well. So after my schooling was over, and Grandma and Pop had moved to Chicago, and Pop was the senior vice president of Encyclopedia Britannica, which is kind of neat since you like to look things up so much. And when I was there, I worked for an advertising agency, and I had several small businesses of my own. I designed costumes for small productions, and what else did I do? I was a busy little camper. I don't remember. See, even I don't remember. How about that? So, when I was 23, I married your Grandpa Jim, who you do remember, I'm very sure. And I met him when I was working at BBD&O Advertising. And we had a wonderful life together. And we bought a house. We had our apartment in Chicago, and then we had another house. We used to say we were going to the lake. It was the same lake we lived on in Chicago, but somehow when we went to the other side of it, it was the lake. So we used to take the two cats, who your mom, I'm sure, has told you about, Jonathan and George Cat, and we would load Jonathan and George Cat into the humongous big station wagon, and we would trek on over to the lake, which was about a 2-hour drive. And invariably, one of the cats, that would be probably John, would sit on top of the luggage, and then he would decide that he would make smells. Then we would all have to comment about that. Then George Cat would sneak into the front seat and get underneath the gas pedal. Get the cat out from under the gas pedal! What am I going to do? I can't push the pedal and I can't brake. Well, that was amusing. So several times we would have to stop along the way to free ourselves from the cats. And then, once we got to the lake, they would crouch by the front door and watch the wild animals, that would be a raccoon, parading across the porch. And your mom and Aunt Jamie loved it there. They were in high school then. And so they had a lot of friends, and it was a great time for all of us. It was terrific. Then, well, Papa Jim had an opportunity. One of my clients, I was working for a public relations agency, and the man who owned it was Frank Sullivan, who was the former press secretary for Mayor Daley in Chicago. And, oh, he was a very interesting man. I will have to do another something to tell you all of his stories. But I used to commute back and forth, hours back and forth, just so you guys could, or your mother and her sister could stay at the lake and have a good time while I was back in Chicago. And that was when I had an opportunity to buy a Lazy Boy, which was my client, franchise in California. So I stayed in Chicago and I was working, and your grandfather went to California with his good friend, Rich Plain. They were buddies from grade school and kindergarten, I think. And they ran and owned the store together. And then I went out there about a year later and helped run the store and did the buying for accessories and all of those things. And about that time, your grandfather and I decided that although we did love each other, that we just really didn't have a whole lot in common anymore. And so we decided to go our separate ways, which was okay with both of us, because we still liked each other both very much. And your mom and your Aunt Jamie were good with that. So that's what I did. And I came to the desert, and I had a business which was called Legal Easy. And we had paralegals who worked for us for people who couldn't afford to go to a lawyer, and we would process all the paperwork. And that's when I met Cy, the love of my life, who I have been with now for 20 years. I was with your grandfather for 32, and now I'm with Cy for 20, so I'm not exactly running around. I kind of get with somebody and I stay there for a long time. And with Cy, we had several very interesting businesses. We had the Bulls and Bears Club, which was a private club for investment traders, and we had real-time trading machines, and it was a big club. It was more than 10,000 square feet. We had a humidor lounge. That was where people went and could smoke cigars. We had lunch served and breakfast, and that was a lot of fun. And the only reason we closed that was because the market got so strange that people really weren't that interested in investing for themselves anymore. They were turning their money over to investment brokers. So we had to close the Bulls and Bears Club. Then we started a company called Yellow Brick Road, which was a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful television show that featured entertainers and interesting people and everyone that just here in the desert who were people you'd want to know. And that was on the air for 2.5 years, I think, almost 3. And Mimi Gold was our editor. She was phenomenal. I can only tell you that. And Dana Adkins, who just has been in Broadway productions and was the star of Beach Blanket Babylon in San Francisco and did all kinds of interesting things. She was our hostess for the show. She would do anything. She would go out to the dog, Save a Pet, and she would have the dogs all jumping all over her, and she would go to the fishing pond and she would go fishing. She would ride on unicycles. I don't care. She even rode on a camel, I think, one time. I have some tapes of those shows. We will look at tapes from Yellow Brick Road because I think you'll really like that a lot. And right now, I'm working as a designer at Ethan Allen Furniture, which I love. I've been doing that for almost 7 years. And I have a lot of clients who are very happy with what I've done for them. And it makes me happy to know that I've made somebody else happy. But the happiest thing in my life is you. You are the love of my life. Without Mr. Nicholas, there wouldn't be very much. So this is for you, Nicholas. I love you with all my heart and soul. And I want you to keep this and remember Grammy. Bye-bye, sweetheart. I love you.